Pete is out on his evening stroll along the river when he hears a ton of yelling and screaming from up ahead. Pete senses something isn't right, so he puts his head down and sprints in that direction. As he comes over the top of the final hill, he is greeted with a terrifying scene. An elderly woman has slipped and fell into the rushing river. Luckily, she was washed into a big boulder out in the middle of the rapids, which she now holds onto for dear life. As he caresses the hill, Pete's feet never stop moving. He angles himself about 50 yards upstream of the woman and at full speed, leaps as far out into the river as possible. Struggling to keep his head above water, Pete maneuvers himself to be in line with the woman as he is pushed downstream. Upon passing, he latches onto the rock, then latches onto the woman. Somehow he manages to get both the woman and himself back to safety. When they crawl out of the river onto the bank, Pete is as surprised with himself as everyone else is. He is asked why he decided to risk his life to save the elderly woman. But he repeatedly says there was no decision to make. It just happened. I don't remember a single thought that went through my mind. Something came over me, Pete says. Pete has just risked his entire life for that of a complete stranger. But that's not the crazy part. He did this without even thinking about it. Pete's story is a common one. All around the world we hear stories of heroic actions being taken. Someone jumping in at the blink of an eye to save someone else's life, oftentimes being someone they do not even know. We can stare at a menu with 10 items on it for 20 minutes and actually get further away from making a decision the longer we look. So what is going on in our mind that leads us to making perhaps the most important decision of our lives without even having to think about it? That is where the faculty of intuition comes in. Intuition is the ability to understand something instinctively, without any need for conscious reasoning, kind of like a gut feeling. We can have intuitions about anything, such as morals, beliefs, other people, and even ourselves. For example, Pete highlights a common intuition that seems to be built into human nature on a very deep level: saving the life of another human being that is calling for help. You will hear the most unbelievable stories of people doing the most unbelievable things to help save the life of someone that is obviously about to have theirs taken from them. And this is what gives intuition its power. The knowledge needed to make these instantaneous decisions doesn't even undergo conscious reasoning. When we act intuitively, we are not having a debate in our mind, weighing the pros and cons or the truth and falsehoods of what lies in front of us. It is an action that comes from a much deeper subconscious level, as if it is something you already know how to do, even though it's something you've never done before. Intuitions are kind of like instincts, in the sense that it's knowledge we don't have to actively learn in order to understand. Pete had never trained for that situation, or anything remotely close to it. When he saw it in front of him, he knew what to do without even having to think about it. He acted. And these actions were completely guided by Pete's intuition.